Amit, how are you, sir?
I'm well, Roberto. How are you? Happy day before the election.
That's right. Amit, first tell us what you're doing now. Explain your role. And obviously I want to talk ballot proposals and how that's going, but I want to just sort of explain to folks what it is, what your current role is, and what the objective is, please.
Sure. So I am currently serving as the campaign director for Yes on Affordable Housing, Props 2 through 5. These are the four housing related ballot measures that will appear on the backs of New Yorkers' ballots when they go to vote tomorrow. And these four measures taken together are essentially going to make it much faster, less expensive, and easier for us to build the type of affordable and modest housing that working New Yorkers so desperately need.
Amit, who's on board? Who's in support in terms of the elected class?
Well, we're really proud in just a very short 7 weeks to have built a pretty massive and diverse coalition, including Comptroller Brad Lander, Borough Presidents Mark Levine, Antonio Reynoso, Donovan Richards. We even have Governor Kathy Hochul, and we even have a council member, Keith Powers. In addition to that, we have more than 60 nonprofit and community partners, including organizations that serve the homeless, Homeless Services United, Supportive Services, Services for the Underserved, Vocal New York. We have the Ali Forney Center. We have Sage USA. We have Chaya CDC. We have the Chinese American Planning Council. We have multiple progressive democratic clubs, including Jim Owls, New Kings, Lambda. And this diverse coalition, we've been able to build it because the housing crisis is something that is affecting millions of New Yorkers from the Bronx to Brooklyn. Fully
Amit,
50% of renters and homeowners can't afford the roofs over their heads. And there's a reason why there's been such a groundswell to finally fix a broken system that's blocked housing in our city for too long.
Amit, why only one council member in a 50-member body?
Well, that's a question probably better asked to the 51 council members. But long story short, um, you know, these proposals uh, essentially make the argument that the council needs to be playing a different but also a very important role in getting affordable housing done. And the primary issue that the council has decided to take with these proposals is the creation of an appeals board, which would consist of the mayor, borough president, and also the city council speaker. And this appeals board would have the ability to potentially overturn a council decision to block affordable housing and only affordable housing when such a decision is made. Uh, this does not actually remove from the council any authority to negotiate the best deal they can possibly negotiate between city agencies, a community, and a developer. In fact, there's greater incentive involved here for the council to work closely, especially with their borough president, to get the best deal possible done. The involvement of the borough president more formally in this process actually enables the borough president to sit formally at a table at which they already informally sit. And it is really important, actually, for borough presidents to be able to provide the borough-wide perspective on being able to create housing, because in almost every single borough across the city, we've seen that there are certain neighborhoods that have built an enormous amount of housing in the last 10 years, and there are others that have been built almost none. Take Queens, for example, where I live. Queens Community Board 2 has been the most housing producing neighborhood of any community district in the city. In the last 10 years, Long Island City has been the fastest growing zip code in the country. Just last year, Queens Community Board 2 produced 3,500 units of housing, and Queens Community Board 13 produced just 76. And so, really, when we understand that our housing crisis is a citywide problem, we have a deficit of 1 million units that does not even account for future growth. We understand that we need to be able to build housing in every single part of the city. And the status quo, which is that just 12 community districts across the city have built more housing than the other 47 combined, is not a status quo that is working for working New Yorkers.
Amit, what's wrong with member deference? What? Some will make the argument that the local member is the one most familiar with the needs of the district and the community. Wouldn't this be an affront to member deference on land use in the city council?
Look, as we've stated, and as New Yorkers themselves know, our housing crisis is a citywide problem, and we're only going to be able to solve a citywide problem with a citywide solution. Member deference has been a double-edged sword. While in some cases, sure, it has enabled council members to extract what they would argue are concessions and deals from developers. On the other hand, there are many swaths of the city where the member deference structure has actually placed individual council members in a vice grip where a small minority of their constituents are able to force individual council members to block housing. It's essentially a Hobbes choice, either block housing or lose your seat. And we saw this happen most recently with Marjorie Velasquez in the Bronx, who really had to be brought around to ultimately support the Bruckner Boulevard rezoning, which included a significant amount of affordable housing. A small minority of constituents in the 13th Council District were opposed to this, and they organized and essentially defeated her at the ballot box. And not only did she lose, but she lost to a Republican, right? And that same Republican, in negotiating with the city a land use deal to build the new Morris Park station for Metro North that's going to open within a couple of years, significantly reduced the amount of housing that the city had actually originally proposed. And when you think about where the station is going to be, right now there is nothing immediately adjacent to the station other than a bunch of warehouses and some empty land. And so when you have a council member that is negotiating units of housing away where we need to be building it, which is a relative transit desert, and in a place where the land acquisition costs are relatively low from a citywide perspective, you really start to understand how member deference can lead to blocking the affordable housing we so desperately need to serve New Yorkers.
I mean, what, if any, dialogue have you all had with the Speaker of the City Council, Adrian Adams? What negotiations? Why is she opposed totally? Have you had any dialogue with her to bring
Look,
her, hopefully bring her around?
I certainly can't speak for the speaker. The speaker can only speak for herself. I certainly think the $2.5 million of taxpayer money that the council has used to send rather obvious aggressive electioneering materials to New Yorkers does in fact speak for itself. At the same time, I want to give Speaker Adams credit for, in relative terms, having been a champion on issues of housing. She muscled through the council, City of Yes, which was a very difficult process. And she deserves credit for that. And certain individual council members deserve credit for standing up for that. And also for greenlighting housing in their districts. But that's really, they've been forced into that position. This iteration of the council has been forced into that position. And I use that term very deliberately, iteration. And it's because multiple iterations of the council up until now have failed to act sufficiently on housing. When you have a system where a small-minded few can block housing in district after district, that means the council is not collectively as a body greenlighting the total amount of housing that we need, both market rate and affordable. This has led to what the New York Housing Conference just released last week, a situation where you have council districts in the Bronx that have produced upwards of 7,000 or 8,000 units of affordable housing in the last 10 years. And you have several council districts across Eastern Queens, Southern Brooklyn, Staten Island that have produced fewer than 100. And so, of course, Speaker Adams had to act. I'm glad that she did with City of Yes. I'm glad that this council has done more than previous iterations of the council to greenlight housing. But when you have a structure that enables small-minded few New Yorkers to block housing, you realize that that is what's gotten us into this mess in the first place. And unless we change that structure, we're never going to reach the goal of building the 1,000,000 units that we just so desperately need.
What about the Democratic nominee and likely next mayor, Assembly Member Zoran Mamdani? Has he taken a position yet, or have there been conversations with him and his team?
Well, I think Zoran's position on this has been clear, which is that he appreciates that they're on the ballot and he is not putting his thumb on the scale. And I think any other questions could be answered by him and his team.
Amit, now let's talk about what affordability means. What constitutes affordable when it comes to housing? Because there are members that have gotten 100% affordable. But my question to you is, I've also heard, hey, I saw an HPD lottery and I don't qualify. There are some neighborhoods that don't, again, working poor or poor or low income, who say we still can't afford the housing that's being built. If anything, some people make the argument that it'll lead to more displacement. What are your thoughts on that, and what constitutes affordable?
Well, this is a very important question, and I want to first lay out for your listeners that this specific question cannot be answered by the charter, which of course functions a little bit like New York City's constitution. Just like the US Constitution cannot dictate how Congress spends its money, but rather that it is Congress that has the power of the purse. The charter similarly can lay out the rules of the road, but is not in a position to dictate project by project what a housing financing deal is going to look like. And housing financing, as many of your listeners probably know, is a pretty complex topic. But let's talk about affordability because I do think this is a very important question to answer. Broadly speaking, when you are spending less than 30% of whatever your income is, whether that income is 30,000 or 50,000 or 100,000, when you are spending 30% or less of your gross monthly income on rent, that you are considered as living in a type of housing that is affordable to you. Now, this is obviously going to be very different for different people because different people have different incomes. Proposal 2, in particular, fast tracks 100% affordable housing that is financed by the city. The vast majority of these projects go down to pretty deep levels of affordability, 30, 40% of area median income. And what this means is that the housing that is being created um, for a family of 3, for example, the affordable limit would be $43,000 for a single person. I think it's around 34,000. That's the annual extrapolation of someone earning an hourly minimum wage. And so this is the type of housing that these proposals are going to start to unlock. The other really important aspect of this to remember is that when you're building a 50-story glass condo in waterfront Brooklyn or Long Island City, the costs for building that type of construction tend to be very high. They're high not only because of the size, but they're high because of the land acquisition cost. They're also high because those types of construction have many requirements that they need to meet in terms of earthquake resiliency, storm resiliency, fire safety, what have you, things that are very important. No one is suggesting that those shouldn't be in place. But if you are putting $1 of city subsidy into creating affordable units in such a project, that $1 of city subsidy is only going to be able to take you so far, defraying the ultimate cost of the rent for a unit maybe by 10 cents or 20 cents or 30 cents. When you are able to acquire land much faster in other parts of the city that have built no affordable housing, parts of Eastern Queens, parts of the East Bronx, parts of Southern Brooklyn, where the land acquisition costs are much lower, where maybe you're building a 6 or 7-story building and not a 50-story building, every $1 of city subsidy that's being invested in that type of construction can go a lot farther, which means that the type of housing that is going to be created is ultimately much more affordable. And when you start to unlock huge geographic swaths of the city that have been previously shut out entirely from developing any affordable housing because it is too easy to weaponize our current process to block it, you find that you can create supply at a much higher rate than what we have been able to do. And when you are able to do that, you will be able to finally bring the cost of housing down.
Now, Amit, talk about how we could, for the layperson, right? Because you're wonky and you're nuanced and you know the process well, obviously. People say that the problem is AMI. Now, get spoon feed somebody that says AMI can sort of be, what's the word I'm looking for? Neutral, as people will say, hey, because it includes Rockland and other parts of the suburban city, that largely AMI is not representative of someone's income. Again, because of that. Talk about a little bit in a sort of more of a layman's perspective how this sort of trumps AMI and or neutralizes it, so someone of low income can afford one of these affordable units.
Well, look, there may be other housing experts who are better suited to answer this question in great detail, but what I can tell you is that the type of 100% city financed HPD projects that Proposal 2 in particular would fast track really do look at income levels in New York City. So as I mentioned, if you are a household of 3 that would be applying for an average type of unit in one of these developments, you're going down to the lowest income levels, that would be 43,000 for the household. If you're a single person, that would be 34,000. These are pretty low incomes in New York City. The other thing to remember is you're absolutely right. that when we do create affordable housing, there are some statistics that sometimes for, you know, 10,000 units, there's a waiting list that's millions of people long, right? I was just on a Zoom last week with Carlin Cowan of the Chinese American Planning Council. They're one of the organizations that's deeply supportive of our effort. They just built 100% senior housing downtown. First of all, it took them 10 years to build this project, which is just, I think, somewhere between 150 to 200 units. It's not huge, right? Um, and they had something like 55,000 applicants for those 100 plus units. So that just goes to show you that the amount of affordable housing that we have been producing is so paltry to what the need is. And unless we can start to produce and make available that housing so much faster, we're never going to be able to meet the current demand, let alone plan for the future. And
Uh,
we've seen this play out all over the city. For those folks who are in Western Queens, many might be familiar with the Phipps Barnett Avenue proposal. Phipps is a nonprofit developer. They first proposed a 180 or so unit building in 2016 at this site on Barnett Avenue in Sunnyside Woodside. And it's not going to be available for keys in the door until next year, fully 10 years after it was first proposed. And not placing blame or giving accolades to anybody. This has spanned two different mayoral administrations, two different city council members. There are a lot of different people who've played roles here. But now this is a 167 unit project. To bring 167 units of 100% affordable housing online simply cannot take us 10 years. If it is taking us 10 years, we will never meet the demand for affordable housing in New York.
Amit, so you said the council has spent upwards of $1 million on sort of pushing back on these proposals. How much money have you all raised? And how's it going so far? What's your gut feeling on one, educating the public as to what this is and isn't? How much money, how much funding did you receive for the campaign? And how do you feel about the ultimate outcome?
Well, look, we were given a very short sprint within which to run a massive citywide campaign. We're just about 7 weeks. We've raised and spent about $1.5 million,
Where'd
just a
it
little
come
over
from?
that.
Where'd it come from?
All of our donations are disclosed. Folks can look them up on the state BOE's website. Mostly just private donations. We also received a good chunk from Open New York, which is a pro-housing group. They do not take any money from real estate developers. The Yes on Affordable Housing campaign has not taken any money from real estate developers.
But
And
overall, you were not against taking money from developers, hypothetically,
we
right?
no, we that was a decision we made, is that the Yes on Affordable Housing PAC has not taken any money from real
Okay,
estate developers.
okay,
That was a intentional decision.
okay,
Yep.
got it.
And so, when we've spent this money on in the way it matters most, which is communicating directly with New Yorkers. We have launched a massive television campaign. Our digital ads and organic videos have nearly 20 million impressions. They've been very heavily served to many different communities across the city. We've made investments of hundreds of thousands of dollars in local and community media, Spanish language radio, um, all different types of community media. And we have a large volunteer operation. We've been at 60 poll sites last weekend. We were at 60 poll sites this weekend. We'll be at 60 poll sites on election day. And so we're really reaching people where it matters the most. Now, look, we had a short amount of time in which to do this. Certainly, I wish I could tell you that I had 7 months and not 7 weeks. But in that time, we've been able to get the message out there that people need to flip their ballots and vote yes on 2, 3, 4, 5. And look, we've been doing the best we can to counter what I will say is misinformation from the council. The council has tried to make it seem like these are Eric Adams ballot proposals. While it is true that the Adams administration convened the Charter Revision Commission, you can look up to see who was on it. It's a list of some of New York's most foremost public servants and civic leaders. And their work, as is the work of every Charter Revision Commission, is required to be independent, which it was. And these proposals did not come from the mayor, but rather from 4,000 New Yorkers who testified at a dozen hearings saying, here are the problems when it comes to getting affordable housing built. And these proposals came directly out of those New Yorkers' 4,000 pieces of testimony.
Last
And
question. Go ahead, Amit. Finish. I'm sorry.
I know, I was just going to say, and the fact that the Charter Revision Commission's work was pretty independent is bolstered by a piece of information that many people might not know, which is that something that someone like Eric Adams may really like, a proposal to have nonpartisan primaries. was actually ultimately rejected by the commission because of public outcry, right? And this is the type of thing that someone like Eric Adams or in his position would probably want to see. So it just goes to show that their focus was really about making sure that we can fix a broken system that has blocked affordable housing for too long in New York, and was being responsive to direct testimony from New Yorkers.
Last question: how would you grade Eric Adams, one-term mayor now, on housing from A to F? How would you give grade him?
That's a difficult question to answer. What I will say is I think he has a housing team that has really been second to none. Maria Torres Springer, Dan Garodnick, Layla Bozorg, Genevieve Michelle, Emeth Tagani. These are folks who are consummate public servants. These are folks who have spent their whole careers being focused on not only building housing, but making sure that housing is sufficiently affordable for New Yorkers. And there's a reason that, they were able to successfully negotiate with the council to get City of Yes done. And look, I don't mind saying that I think the council probably felt that they had, more trusted partners in the housing leaders I just mentioned than they probably did in the mayor. And I think it's important for New Yorkers to understand that, because it just goes to show the value of having the right public servants with the right values, the right convictions, and the right ethics in the right roles, which is something that I think I personally feel confident we will see in the Mamdani administration. And it just goes to show that even in a very, very turbulent, disappointing, and shocking city hall, we actually have seen some leadership that has made a difference. So, I give credit to that group of individuals for making real progress on housing.
Thank you, Amit. Anything you want to add that I forgot to ask you? And I just want to let you run because I know you got a full. Well, you got a lot on your plate.
Look, I want to also put these housing ballot measures in a slightly larger context, and it's really important for New Yorkers to understand this. Blue states and cities for a long time now have been losing population relative to red states and cities, in no small part, and chiefly because of our housing affordability crises. This is most acutely pronounced in New York and California. And if this dynamic continues, now keep in mind, we had to fight tooth and nail in 2020, and our $40 million campaign was successful in saving a congressional seat for New York State. We were supposed to lose two. We were about 90 people shy of actually keeping both. If Andrew Cuomo had done his job in the rest of the state, we would have kept both. But we are losing population, particularly of working people, to other places. If this trend continues, we will lose in the next census by reapportionment House seats. If we lose House seats, that puts the control of the House further from our grasp. It also means we will lose seats in the Electoral College, because the number of seats that every state has in the Electoral College is tied directly to the number of House seats that we have. And so if we lose population to places that have made it much easier to build housing, where housing is much more affordable, we are actually putting our whole national political dynamic at risk. You will agree with me if you're a Democrat. And that is something that's really important to consider. And I will just end with this. New York City's entire personality, our entire character, the very nature of our being, is that we have been a beacon for working people and creative people and strivers to come from all over the country and all over the world since the day we were founded. And we've been able to do this because even though we have struggled with housing at different points in our history, we have ultimately always found a way to house our working people affordably. And if we are not able to do that, we are putting our demographic and economic futures at risk. New Yorkers have a unique opportunity to leverage the power of their own votes tomorrow to pass into law these charter revision amendments that will make it easier for us to build the affordable housing we need.
Thank you, Amit, and keep doing what you're doing, and good luck on the endeavors and the ultimate outcome. Talk soon, Amit. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.